stories of our lives, words on a page, create a special feeling that become memories. Favorite melodies sung in harmony, lyrics that will tell your story. Come and join the adventures that we now share.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Songs of Our Lives, a show where we discuss the role music has played in seniors' life and hear some special stories from their past and present. Today's episode features local and national Windsor musician Kelly Hoppe. Kelly's career has taken him from the top of the local scene to being on tour on the world stages with such recording groups such as Big Sugar and others, including warming up for the Rolling Stones. Kelly will be interviewed by his longtime friend and local drummer sensation, Venney, who has also enjoyed a long and varied musical career. I would like us to catch up now with Kevin and Kelly. We will be able to hear some harmonica being played by Kelly as well.
Welcome to tonight's episode of Songs of Our Lives. Today we have special guest Kelly Hoppe, and we will be talking about his life in the music. Welcome, Kelly.
Hey, Kevin, how you
Thank
doing?
you. Great. It's an honor and privilege to have you on this show with us.
Same back to you.
And really looking forward to delving into your experiences of your life in the music. And I know there's a lot of rich topics we can go through. So.
Yeah, I can talk about it.
Yeah, you've got a few
years.
years.
I can talk too much about it.
Right. Well, we'll cut you off when we need to.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'd like to just start off at first of all, at what age did music actually pique your interest?
I would think when probably like tens of millions of other people, throughout history of music, maybe in terms of the last 50, 60 years in North America. When I first realized what this thing was coming at me out of the radio. And when I was growing up, transistor radios had just been invented, but there was portable radios, and I remember listening to WXYZ AM radio, of course, and there was a DJ named Lee Allen, and he would sort of tease the audience. I didn't realize that's what he was doing, but he would play certain songs during the evening of his show. And I was supposed to be asleep, but it was my brother and I were staying up listening to Lee Allen on WXYZ. And I heard this song called Hit the Road Jack by a guy named Ray Charles. And I loved it. I just didn't know why I loved it, but it just, it got to me, right?
Sure.
And I remember rooting for the song that he would, well, it's number 43 this week, so we get enough people calling in. I hope it can move into the top 40 so those people that like Hit the Road Jack. And that's kind of when I had this sense of there's this, first of all, this technology of radio and what it's all about. And that was that real exciting part of it. And it to sort of add to this, or as an adjunct, is that my parents were big music fans, and my dad had he had comedy albums too. He had Mort Saul at the Hungry Eye, but he had like Miles Davis records. I didn't know who this Miles Davis person was, but he had Miles Davis records, and because my dad played trumpet, I never saw him play trumpet. He played when he was a teenager. He apparently played it. He was very serious about it at one point in his life, and then he became a dentist. So but he loved music, and music was just always on in the house. And I think again, like every household I knew of all my friends and stuff, music was presented, you could even watch at Sullivan see music, but it was just coming at you from everybody's car radio. Cars didn't, especially in the summertime, didn't have air conditioning, many cars back then, so everybody had their windows down. And I can remember the summer of, I think it's 1965. Anyway, I love the song Sugar Pie Honey Bunch by the Four Tops, and they were just from across the river. and it was like you could drive down Dougal Road, Olette Avenue, and everybody's car windows are down, and everybody's got the radio on in the car. And it was like the soundtrack of that summer because it was a big hit, and it just seemed to be something that you know, I had other interests in life at a young age. I liked sports and things like that, and I kind of like school too. But man, it was just, you know, and I look back, it's like an embarrassment of riches considering what, you know, late 50s, early 60s through the 70s, what was on the radio and what you could go see once you're old enough to go to shows and things like that. But at a young age, it was like, it was just, you know.
So it impacted you pretty young, like
yeah,
age
it was
7,
like I
right?
didn't play an instrument. I didn't
Right.
foresee myself doing that, but I was consuming it like, again, like all my friends, everybody at school. It just seemed like, but it was a great time for that. As you look back in history, you didn't realize how fortunate we were living where we lived, with the radio culture that was coming from there, and CKLW here in Windsor, and you know, might not have been as good as that if you lived somewhere in a more you know, rural area or further away from the border. So it was just and older brothers and sisters. I was the second youngest. My older brother had a keen interest in music, and you know, a Beatles album came out, he had it right away. A Rolling Stone, you know, I learned about the Rolling Stones from him, and not that he sat me down and talked to me about it, but you know, he was playing his records. Yeah, he was like a teenager when I was 6-7 years old, and
well, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
You can remember like that young, this particular song that sort of hit you and got you started. You know, hit the road jack and different songs like, you know, like that. And I understand, you know, you wanted it to make the billboard so you could hear it again. You know?
Yeah. I didn't want to hit the road jack to fall out of the top 40, and Lee Allen was going to, you know, break your heart.
Excellent.
If he did that.
Okay, and I was going to ask you, can you reflect on a song or a style that had an impact on you? But maybe with song, obviously you did. But back then, I guess maybe even a little older, was there a certain style of music? I guess probably rock and roll Motown, right?
Yeah, I mean, really, that you know, what we would call rock and roll. That, you know, the Brit. You know, I'm 10 years old and watching Ed Sullivan and seeing the Beatles, and so anything. There was lots of bands associated with that movement. Like I said, the Rolling Stones or. You know, Dave Clark 5, any number of bands you could mention, but there was lots of great, you know, I'll call it American music bands from this area, or you know, North America in general, and the great thing was, again, we were, you know,
in this mecca.
Like Motown was, well, partly it almost had a foot in Windsor. Those Motown artists were showing up at 825 Riverside Drive West and playing on television on the Robin Seymour show.
Right.
And you could kind of relate to that. You know, as you get older, you go, hey, that's in this city.
Yes, for sure.
But let alone what was coming over the airwaves. And that sort of, you know, I remember my brother Carter, he was the oldest, and he was, how old would he have been? 18. He went to the Motortown Review, the first sort of amalgamation of Motown artists, and now started, you know, their songs like the Temps, the Supremes are becoming huge international stars, but they put a show on at the Fox, and my brother Carter went to that, and
pretty historical.
What was it like? You know,
no kidding.
You know, I'm 8-10 years old, going, what was that like? You know, and he'd regale as much as he wanted to let a little brother know what's going on, but
That was fortunate for us being in Windsor, like Windsor, Detroit. You know, this rock and roll Motown combination thing that we really, you know, and I remember talking with you at one point earlier, like as you later on in high school, and you had books like Bob Seger in your high school and different, you know. I mean,
I was the Minister of Entertainment at Massey High School, which is a student council position. The Minister of Entertainment. But and I remember going, I think Alice Cooper played when I was in grade 12 or 13, played at Walkerville. Like all the high schools were putting on these great, you know, you see Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels, you know,
and Rosalie Tremblay kind of helping with all those acts coming down, and you know, which
that kind of stuff you don't know till later in terms of, you know,
true,
certainly would have known it then, but you know, that impact of somebody, you know, being the curator of music at that station, and now we know that whether it's Bob Seger, Elton John, and you know,
Alice Cooper,
all these artists will talk about how that Clear Channel radio station at CLW made their careers, you know, and she just had an ear for what was good.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
We all got exposed to it, which is a good thing, you know.
Yeah.
Motown was great.
Yeah.
Okay, so how about yourself as far as getting into music, as far as a musician? Like, when did you maybe first start singing or take up an instrument? What instrument did you take up, and at what point did you?
Yeah, you know what? I took keyboard lessons when I was probably around the age 8, 9, 10, 11, and I was terrible. I just, it kind of broke my heart because I love music so much, and we had a Hammond C3 organ. My dad could sit down and play the organ, and that's when I realized years later that because he studied trumpet, he understood chord structures and he could read music and stuff like that, and he took up as a hobby. He got himself, he'd never played keyboard, but he got himself this Hammond living room organ, and so we took lessons on it, and 3 of us at least did, and my sister did okay. My brother Rand, my sister Darren did fine, but my brother Rand was really intuitive. He didn't really do well. I would say this. I mean, maybe he understood theory to some degree, but Rand could make up, compose songs.
A little more natural.
Yeah, like the teacher would actually probably, I think our teacher, didn't really want him doing that, but Rand could really create. I was terrible, left-hand independence, and I didn't work at it. I was lazy. As soon as it was early April, I played baseball, and
Sure.
I'll say at a serious level, it was all it consumed me for years.
Right.
So I didn't practice like I should have. But I also thought, I came to realize years later, when I did find something that I seemed to be able to mess around with another instrument. I think sometimes you have a facility that for one thing as opposed to another. I'm glad I took keyboard lessons as a kid because when I first started learning the harmonica, I saw black and white notes in my head when I was starting to understand how the harmonica's laid out and things like that. And when I took up the saxophone as well, but that's years later, the age of around 10, 11, I thought that's it. And then in high school, a few years later, I took trumpet in grade 9. And I had a facility for it, and I also thought it was the nerdiest. I was into Cream, and
the timing.
Yeah, it was just guitar trios.
Right.
I loved tons of rock music.
Horns were not cool.
Nobody. The only cool horn was when Blood, Sweat, and Tears came out. But the trumpet I could hear on that, I was not at that level. There's guys in my high school that could play that kind of stuff. But I actually had a year of grade 9 compulsory music, and I played. I would get 9 out of 10 and 10 out of 10 on my playing test.
Nice.
And I would get 2 out of 10, 1 out of 10, or 0 out of 10 on my theory test. But the teacher wanted me to come back for grade 10 and take it because I could play the instrument. He liked my tone and all that kind of stuff. And I just went, nah, I don't want to.
Right.
I secretly told myself, nah, I don't want to do that.
You have to be be convinced about it and be excited about it now.
So it wasn't until years later that I stumbled into the harmonica.
Okay.
19, 20, 21
And
years.
that happened how?
Just a real happenstance. I started buying, the rock bands I was following. I could realize once I'm a teenager that the Rolling Stones listened to this thing called blues. I hear more and more about it. And Eric Clapton played with John Mayall and the Blues Breakers before he was in Cream. But Cream, that's kind of like blues music. Who's Skip James? I was a real liner note guy even back then, and Cream covered a song by, they wrote their own material too, but it's the guy named Skip James. Who's Skip James? And I saw a Skip James record at the local record department, and it was this guy who was recorded live at Newport Folk Festival in 1964. An African American man who was looked to be in his 60s in the photograph, and I heard the real.
Sure, that's great.
I the song that Cream covered. I heard the original version, and I went, "Man, blues is really cool." Who's this B.B. King guy that Eric Clapton and Freddie King and Albert King? That was what I started getting into. But I didn't think of me playing harmonica with that music. I just really liked it, and I just through a weird party one time with a friend of mine. He had a friend come down from Toronto who could really play the harmonica, like a blues harmonica player. He could play guitar and piano, this guy too. And I just said, man, that sounds, to hear it just somebody right in front of me play it, what is that all about? And he just said, and fortunately I took, as bad as I was at keyboard lessons, I knew when he said, find out the key of the song and go up a perfect fourth, and you will find the harmonica you need to play. So if it's in the key of G, G, A, B, C, get out your C harmonica. And if you don't have one, go buy one.
Right.
They're all
Good learning
diatonic, you
experience.
gotta buy 12 of them. But
Right.
anyway, and that, he just told me, and he gave me a few tips of where the notes are a little bit.
Nice.
And if that hadn't happened, I don't know if I've, it was
That
really
probably changed your
serendipity.
life in a sense.
It eventually did, yeah.
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 It led to that, you
It,
know.
yeah,
So-
yeah, became, that led to me becoming a professional musician, of all things. And I mean, I say of all things, I'm a huge fan of the instrument, but I know it's a very niche kind of instrument
Yeah.
too. So
So discovering this harmonica and that you really had a knack for it, or you really enjoyed it. Who was one of your favorite harmonica players that you really kind of studied or listened to a lot and really had an impact on you?
you know,
It's,
I
as far
can-
as blues maybe.
yeah. What I heard, I was in this the Montreal Folklore Center. I took a year off. I took a summer off after my first year of university because I didn't know what I wanted to major in. And some advice was, hey, take a year off till you figure out you're a little more mature, whatever it is, depending who you are. And so I went with a friend of mine to Montreal, and we were going to make a living busking because he knew some people that they would probably
It's
hire.
hardcore.
Yeah, he had some friends that he met at a kibbutz in Israel the summer before. They lived in Montreal. I got my friend Kelly. He plays harmonica. We can play 5-6 nights a week up here. I'd never been in a band. And it turned out not to be true at all. These people had nothing going on. So this friend of mine and I had to busk and hang out for the summer. And I was intending not to go back, but I ended up going back in September to second year university. And we went to the Montreal Folklore Center, and they had turntables for their new albums brought in, and it was like a lightning bolt. There was this, I just said, what is that? I know it's harmonica, but it's amplified. What is that? And that guy at the store said, that's a guy named Little Walter. Little Walter, what's he all about? And it's just like 1970s. So he said he died in 1968. He was 38 years old. And it was a double album, like a gatefold album, but with 2 records. And he was a chess recording artist. And I went, oh, that's Muddy Waters. I got a Muddy Waters record at home. The Muddy Waters record I had at home didn't have Little Walter on it because it was after Little Walter had died. But the music, I can still see the light in the room in that Montreal Folklore Center. I can almost see myself standing there going, what the smoke is that? I bought it, and then
That was it.
that was it.
That's great.
Yeah. But that little harmonica piece I
Yes.
played just a few minutes ago
Yeah.
when we started. So I started buying records
Okay.
besides Little Walter. I
Yeah.
really got into all the post-war Chicago blues harmonica players, with him being the king. And I saw this one day in this store in Windsor. I think I got it in Windsor. I'm not sure. Yeah. And it was on this label, which I came to find out was this really cool label called Yazoo out of the United States. And it had all these people, like who's Jazz Gillum, who's Jay Bird Coleman, DeFord Bailey. They're not in bands. I started finding out about in the pre-war, what you call pre-war harmonica blues. They were often just solo artists. People could play a solo piece. If they had accompaniment, it might be an acoustic guitar. Otherwise, and they were doing these fox chases, like just doing these sound effects. Sounds like a dog chasing a fox. That's why they're called fox chases. And there's all kinds of this stuff in here. And that blew my mind. I just said,
Opens your mind up to what
yeah,
the harmonica
like,
can do. Just
oh,
more than just
and I found out about
electronic
DeFord Bailey, that little piece I played a real small segment of Davidson County Blues. DeFord Bailey was on the Grand Ole Opry. As
So
an
that's-
African American harmonica player on the
Wow.
Grand Ole Opry. And I found that out later.
Sounds
I
like a first,
started
maybe. Wow.
getting the history of him, but yeah.
You
So that one thing led to another. But that little Walter thing was
Sure, that was the
big.
biggest impact.
yeah,
And was some-
yeah. It got me going, right? And a lot of these people were doing. Those were like little Walter's mentors.
I see.
Once I started
That's-
studying the history
okay.
of blues and blues harmonica and things like that, so he was standing on their shoulders, right? So, but that's what, yeah.
Neat.
That
So
was,
some of these guys played little tricks and things. Did you steal any of those ideas too?
I think that it all comes out.
It all
I mean,
comes
you
out.
you
So-
know, as you
yeah.
would know, as playing as drums at the level you do, like you listen a lot.
Right.
A lot of teachers tell you that too. Like I now teach harmonica, so I tell my students, you don't do, yeah, you want to learn how to play this thing. Like it's a weird instrument. Like it's a blind man's instrument,
Sure.
a blind person's instrument. But besides playing it, listen to other people playing it on recordings and things like that,
Absolutely.
and maybe pick it'll be a style like blues, or it might be, there's great Irish and British Isles harmonica players who play. There's all kinds of
Yeah.
cultural idiomatic harmonica playing, and but find it and listen to it. And so I think I think Little Walter affected me, but so did J. Bird
Everything-
Coleman and
it's like
anybody
one
in
big
between.
stew
Yeah,
Kind of
You know,
assimilates in there.
yeah, like and people that don't just play blues and harmonica.
Right.
I got into Toots
Great.
Thielman. I still love
Yeah.
Toots Thielman. There's a lot of modern players.
Chromatic player.
Yeah, plays jazz.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
he did. He passed away recently.
I love the tone.
Yeah.
I love them all the tones.
Yeah,
of
Stevie
both.
Wonder.
Yeah.
I Stevie Wonder. I
Yeah.
didn't realize what Fingertips Parts 1 and 2 was when he was 11 years old and I was like 10 or 11 years old watching
Right.
him on. I think he was on Ed Sullivan or not, whatever. It was on the radio.
Yeah.
But that thing, I remember seeing the Grinnell Music Store downtown Grinnell's across from Hudson's, and there was this they were advertising on a poster board thing outside the store. Stevie Wonder buys Hohner harmonicas here.
Wow.
And I thought, well, maybe I'll see
Good
Stevie
sales
Wonder. One of those times I go over to Hudson's.
Right.
I happen not to see him, but yeah, so anybody and everybody affects your thing.
Of course, yeah.
I think.
Yeah,
You absorb, even when you don't know it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it just
That's-
something
yeah.
comes out and you're playing
That's why you
live.
have to listen. You can't just
Yeah. Yeah,
just
you
can't
got to
just
listen
play.
to people all the time.
Okay, tell me about some of the early groups you played in and the success of those groups and popularity of those bands at the time.
Yeah, the first band I was ever in, and my first professional work. The reason I ended up joining the local here in town of the AFM was I played, but I wasn't in a band. I was on the country music shows. There's another form of music I really got into too, on harmonica, and the guy produced the local. It was called the Sun Parlor Country. Then it was called the Tommy Owens Show, etc. There's a bunch of different shows. And at the time, I worked at the CBC in the building, and they had this variety show, this country show, and somebody that produced the show said it was a big fan of the harmonica. And somebody said, Kelly Hoppe down in film editing, he has a couple beers at a party, and he brings this thing out and annoys the hell out of us and stuff. So I auditioned for him. But I did that, and I ended up playing on the Tommy Hunter Show, of all things. But
Excellent.
I played locally on the CBC. But I always wanted to be in a band.
Right.
That gave me confidence, that I joined this professional organization called the Musicians Union, but I wanted to be in a band. Like some of my friends at that point were in bands, and
This point in your later 20s.
yeah, like mid-20s.
Okay.
Yeah, mid-20s I would say,
Mid-20s,
23, 4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Still young. Yeah.
Yeah, still pretty young. And then, and I really wanted to go back and play what I really love. Like I love country music, but I didn't know anybody in the city that played.
It was
And
the rock and roll Motown.
Yeah,
area,
yeah.
More or less at the time.
so I wanted to put a kind of blues rockabilly, some kind of band together. And my cousin Tom Hogarth, he's my cousin, but we're more, we identify well more as friends as opposed to,
Right.
blood relation. But and there's a couple other people, John Earl Murphy, Murray Nosenchuk, who I met. But John Earl Murphy, Tom Hogarth, and I knew each other well as friends. And Tom had played professionally with, and he'd sung jazz with Tom Borshuk. I used to go see them down at the Commodore, do an afternoon jazz thing. And Tom's a great singer and guitar player. So we put this band together called the Dougals, is what we named it, when we were all like 26, 27 years old. And we never thought we would, like, everything that's happening, this is like 1978, 79. The bar scene in Windsor, there's a lot of top 40 bands. There was a guy named Danny Bonk who Danny could work in that milieu, but he would cover Elvis Costello when he did top 40. A lot of the other top 40 bands were doing really a tight playlist stuff. But Danny, he was cool. And he almost might have played every once in a while a rockabilly tune like some Eddie Cochran tune like that the Who had covered,
nice
stuff like that. Summertime Blues, for example. But I was really getting into blues, post-war Chicago blues as a listener and player, I guess. And so we put this band together called the Dougals. And we thought we would never get arrested because we did almost like, we didn't realize this, but we would do almost like a three-set night. We would do mostly a rockabilly set, then a blues set, and then sort of a mixture of that, like Wooly Bully by Sam the Shaman Pharaohs and stuff. And we ended up becoming popular, not top 40 band popular. We couldn't play the bars that seated 250 people or whatever, but we were playing rooms like the Antonelli's downtown on the Lat. We played A-bars on the east side here on Riverside.
Right.
And we would get booked. Eventually we had three or four rooms that we played, and they were all at least 3-nighters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which wasn't bad for...
Not bad. That's great.
And so that
lasted, 5-6 years maybe?
We were together for maybe 4 or 5, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And...
It's a good run. Very good run.
Yeah.
Considering what you're playing.
And we all had day jobs. Like we were all, and get up in the morning and if you're playing a Thursday night,
sure,
get to work Friday morning early and stuff like that. The life of a lot of bands in town. And, but we never thought, we just thought we're playing stuff we're playing what we really like, but that wasn't what was going on in most of the bigger rooms in town. But
okay,
we carved out a little thing for ourselves. Sure. And we ended up with like people that followed us around, like would come to our they eventually start talking.
Yeah.
And they were often, we were like 28, 29, 30, and these people were following us were like university students. And
it was a little different.
Would start talking to them like, why do you? But they were getting into rockabilly. They liked the rockabilly aspect of our band because the Stray Cats were coming on the scene.
That swinging backbeat, energy, lots of energy.
Yeah. And Dave Edmonds and people like that from England who were really into that. So
I'd like to come back to this group thing again a little bit, but you kind of sort of brought me into another question.
Sure.
We'll get through it quickly because I think it was just a shorter span of your life. But so you did work obviously a regular day gig. I think you said CBC or such.
Yeah.
How long did you do that? Why did you leave? And are there any regrets career-wise? Or any thoughts about hindsight as you've done that? Yeah,
good question. It was kind of scary, Thankfully, my wife Joanne really supported this transition. I actually made this transition when I'm like 3 years old, and I wanted to play music full time. That's what I'm getting at. And I thought I wanted to concentrate just to be playing, like not being so all over the map, but just working on playing blues. Because there was rooms in Detroit that I knew, like the Soup Kitchen, Fire Hall in London, Ontario. Most of them were in Ontario. Albert's Hall in Toronto. There was a room in Kitchener called, at the time it was called the Hoodoo Lounge, ended up becoming Pop the Gator. And, I thought, man, let's see what happens, So I decided to leave, and at that time, the CBC was going through these massive cutbacks because the progressive conservatives got in power it was Brian Mulroney, the Prime Minister. So we were getting slashed at the station, so I asked to be laid off, even though I wasn't eligible to be laid off. And my boss was going,
What are you doing?
What are you doing? Like, there's a lot, and I was feeling terrible for all the people who were getting laid off. My wife got laid off, you know, anyway, he worked it so that he said, I've got this guy, he called Ottawa, where the CBC headquarters was. I got this guy down in Windsor who wants to be laid off. And so I got this layoff package. And, I don't know. I mean, I don't have regrets, but it was kind of terrifying.
Okay,
you know, I was, you
I
know.
don't think you had regrets, but you know.
Yeah, but that's a good question to ask. But yeah, you know, and then that's when I formed a band called the Windsor Dukes.
Okay.
Which you know well because you obviously became a drummer for us, and we did travel, right? We played in Ottawa. There's a room up there. We would always play the Rainbow Room, and we had local gigs too. We had a house gig at the Canusa, which started out as a one-night trial gig, then it turned into 2 nights, then it turned into 3, and then we were there and we could 5
nights sometimes.
We ended up doing 5 nights a week there, and we had the freedom to go play London, Ottawa, Toronto,
right,
wherever.
Well, we did
do
some
private functions once in a while,
somebody's
wedding or whatever it was, and it kind of was a going concern, the Windsor Dukes.
Yeah, that was a good time. I think I think you had a huge impact on the city of Windsor, really, as far as the blues scene, because it seemed like, I mean, maybe I'm a little naive because I'm younger, but before the Windsor Dukes came around, there wasn't a blues scene, and
there was a little bit of one. There
maybe.
there was Coach and Horses, the Aardvark.
But I mean, as far as bands, there wasn't anyone sort of playing the roots the way that band was.
Yeah, we certainly staked out a reputation as like real authentic.
Right.
You know, whatever that means. You know, I mean, I liked all the other artists in town, but we were that.
I think that band set the bar a little bit.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
At the time.
Doc Wright on guitar.
Right.
Then JP LePage played guitar. And we were always like a quartet.
Yeah.
And and we got a reputation out of town. Like we were one of the first sort of when we played Kitchener at the Who Lounge, like we're the only Canadian band that the owner would book. Otherwise, he was booking recording acts from the United States.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And
we opened up for some great, like
Coco
Taylor, right?
We opened up for Coco Taylor.
Albert Collins.
We got to be. Pine Top Perkins.
We were his band.
Yeah, because I opened up the club with JP. We opened up Fanny Starlight Lounge, and we were booking. So I had to wear the hat of a booking agent too, or booker of the room. And we, Champion Jack Dupree played the room. We didn't play with him, but we got to be the rhythm section for Pine Top Perkins. I mean, I think I'm still walking on air, and that's like 30 years ago. Yeah. It was like guys at Grammy Hall of Fame and.
Yeah, Lazy Lester, that was a good
Yeah,
one.
we were lazy. We got a lot of gigs doing that, right?
Yeah.
Carrie Bell.
That was
I
really
forgot
amazing.
about that. One of my heroes, harmonica heroes.
Amazing.
And Wild Child Butler.
Who
happened to move to Windsor in the mid '80s.
Yeah.
Great harmonica player.
There's more. There's a list. There's a deep.
It was really a vibrant time, and and the clubs in Detroit. We were playing the Sukish in Detroit.
Yes.
You remember?
Yeah.
I think we played Sully's maybe once in a while.
Yeah.
So
that was you as a band leader. So,
yeah.
So tell me some pros and cons as being a band leader. And
I don't know if there's any pros.
Tell me some good and bad things. There's some things that were challenges for you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what I mean to say is when I say I don't know, I really enjoyed it. Like I loved sort of every aspect of it. I mean, maybe I'm looking through it in rose-colored glasses. I mean, sometimes a band member can.
There's a little bit of babysitting here and there.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that, right? We're all kids, right?
True.
We do something that's called playing.
Right.
We play music. We don't work music.
Right.
Right. So yeah, there's a lot. No, I feel like, hey, I've also been a band member and not a leader. So, there's. But what might have helped me being when I wasn't a band leader, like I knew what the band leader was going through.
Right. Yeah.
But that's with anything in any
That's
line
true.
of work,
Yes.
I think too.
Yeah.
I mean, the relationships you know.
Right.
you and I have, it can't be taken away.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, and everybody I've been in a band with, I always feel like I learned something from musically too. I love their art that they were putting out. They taught me things that I wouldn't have necessarily known. Made me think about a song, how to play it, or how to properly, play the harmonica behind a singer when we did back people up too, right? Yeah. So I think it's mostly pros, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's.
I remember, learning some good things from you. Responsibilities, certain things. I remember, like, because of you as our band leader. I mean, I was always paid up with my dues, work dues.
You thought that was a good thing?
That was one thing.
Yeah.
Showing up on time, all those kind of things were really important.
Yeah.
Those are good things that I think, you may not remember all that, but
you know what? I mean, and I do remember it. I just thought, anybody that was ever in the band, let's say the Winter Dukes, that everybody took it really seriously and everybody enjoyed the hit, the downbeat.
Sure.
Like, can't wait, and everybody learns, I mean, I was like, I was a half generation or slightly older than you, right? So I'd never been in a band. Like, you were 21, I think, when you joined the band. Well, I didn't start, the Dougals, I was like 25, 6 years old when I started doing that. So, I didn't know what it's like to be that young in a band. And we were going on the road, as you know. Like, so you were sort of thrust right into, you had played locally live.
Yeah.
But
I might have been even a bit younger.
Yeah, you might have been. Wait a second, you were 18 or something.
Yeah, I was 18. I was young.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. I think I still remember your social security number or social insurance number because I used to have to fill out. And your birth date, are December 18th, 1966?
Yeah.
I'm right.
Yes, you are.
Is that ridiculous? What do I know?
I used to remember your phone number, but I can't.
Well, I have a mobile. Yeah, sorry. But yeah, there's not many cons to it.
Okay.
There's mostly pros, I would say.
So, how about any other avenues related to the music business? Did you try anything else, and what were the results and experiences gained? So, for example, I think you said you started a club.
Yeah, I had a club called Venney Starlight Lounge on 53 Pitt Street East. I do remember the address, and man, that was for reasons we've already extrapolated. It was like the people we got, and there was shows we got to just see somebody too, right? We wouldn't always be on stage backing these bands were coming in.
Yeah,
bands were coming in, in full 5 or 6 pieces for it. Yeah, that was the bar. It was a bar, so that's a really tough business.
Yeah.
A lot of people told me it was tough when I got into it. It was way tougher than they told me, and they gave me lots of warnings. But it
gives you a little empathy for other club owners, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and actually, before I forgot about this, I'm really going to go way back before I'm really a professional musician. When I was working at the CBC and yet to play professionally as a harmonica player in a band, I helped put together a folk club in Windsor where we booked touring folk acts. Gosh, I guess I've been around so long I forget stuff. Called Club Sandwich. And it was because I was a member of the press club because I worked at the CBC. I was a member of the press club, and they let us put on a recording. So we had Stan Rogers like 2 or 3 times in the space of about a year and a half. We had the Dixie Flyers with Willie P. Bennett from London, Ontario. We had original Sloth Band from Toronto, who like a year before they played our club, they were on Saturday Night Live with Leon Redbone as his band. Like,
wow,
really great musicians. But Jane Siberry, when she was a Canadian folkie, she played in a duo with a woman named Judy Davis, and Jane Siberry might have been like 22 years old, and she already had like a bunch of original material, and so that was a lot of fun. But I did that for about a year and a half. I booked it, and it was we had formed a bunch of friends had formed this folk society thing to help run it. It was a non-profit, and so that kind of gave me an idea of not in certain respects about running a club like Fanny's. Fanny's was a lot tougher, but also just as rewarding.
Tell me about some of the notable experiences you may have had with famous artists or recording touring artists that you may have played with or opened up for or booked in your club.
Oh man!
I mean, it goes on and on. But give me one or two really big ones.
As I haven't got to it yet, but I was after my stint with the Windsor Dukes. I sold my shares in Fanny's, and I joined a band out of Toronto called Big Sugar, and that was 1994 till 2017, with a 6-year hiatus in the early 2000s. But we recorded. We were on, first Polygram, and then Universal Music Canada, and we made records. We made videos. We got a gold record and a platinum record up on the wall there, but that afforded the opportunity. Besides, the band itself was so creative, and that aspect of being in a band was taken to another level. We opened up for the Rolling Stones because of that.
Coincidentally, actually, I was there that night.
Were you at that show?
At the Canada. What's it called?
The Air Canada Centre. The Air Canada Centre had only been open for 1 week.
Yeah, I went there with.
Tragically Hip opened it. The Leafs were on the road or something, so the Leafs had yet to play a game. And a week after the Tragically Hip played, we opened for the Stones.
I remember that.
But we also did, I remember, playing in Montreal, I didn't get to really see her. We're going to have to edit this because now I'm forgetting her name. Sinead O'Connor. Gosh, I can't believe it. Yeah, I got Jane Sibrey in my head.
Yeah.
But Sinead O'Connor.
Oh.
But to see her, and we opened up for Melissa Etheridge in London. We were on a bill. We did that. We opened up for Blues Traveler. We did shows like that. And then, I can't even believe I'm saying we opened for the Rolling Stones.
I know, that's amazing.
It seems like you're pinching yourself still. We ended up making really great friendships with some bands from the United States, like Government Mule, right, who were an offshoot of the Allman Brothers, and we opened for the Allmans actually too. Oh, one time we were on an American label at the time, besides being on our own Canadian label, and Greg Allman had an offshoot band called the Greg Allman Band from the Allman Brothers, and we opened did a California 6. It was we flew out on Christmas Day to San Francisco, and we did up and down the state about 7 shows with Greg Allman Band, 6 or 7 shows.
Wow.
Yeah, and really got to know, you're with that same band every day, and you're the opening act, and their crew were great people, and you kept, when we ended up playing with
family.
Yeah, and those kinds of things were, again, that's almost an embarrassment of riches. We're kind of commonplace that we opened, and also did tours with some really great Canadian bands that we got to know really well, like Wide Mouth Mason, and a band called John Ford based out of Vancouver. And those relationships I still have with those people too, the people in those bands.
So tell me then, what was it like to be working on that level as far as demands and commitment involved with, say, like Big Sugar?
It was, there was a lot of
getting up early, no sleep.
Yeah, well, you were playing. We played a lot for a long time, in a 12-month period, maybe 150 shows. That's a lot when you're traveling. When it's traveling, right? City. Yeah. We did every province, right? And and that was an amazing thing from the point of view of my wife and I have always liked to travel, and and I was really fortunate. I got to go to places that we'd always used to talk about.
Sure.
I got to go to Newfoundland, and then we actually ended up taking a vacation in Newfoundland on a break because Joanne had become really enamored with Newfoundland from some Newfoundland authors she liked, and I said the people there are amazing. We've got so
that's great.
And I felt like across the country, and I think everybody in the band did, everybody in the crew, you have sometimes you meet fans like that. The next time you play Saskatoon, there's a meet and greet after and all that stuff. And then after, like, I mean, I was in the band for a long time, and you make you play these towns over and over again eventually, and so it doesn't have to be musicians you get to know. And sometimes it's somebody that's running the club, or somebody associated with the record label, you know, that you see more and more as you sort of
making connections.
Yeah,
as you're going through it.
and just asking them how their lives are. They're asking you how you're doing, and you get to know these people. Our agent, great, just a, you know, somebody and oftentimes these people are more my age than the rest. Like Grady Johnson was the band leader. He's like a half generation younger than me. So sometimes we'd be around people in the record company who were closer to my age, or Gary Lowe, our bass player.
Sure, yeah.
So I made some friendships that still have lasted, you know, and with crew people too from around the country.
So the demands and commitments weren't really like it's something that you felt a weight on you or anything. It was just because you were there. Anyway.
It was like going to another gear, but I felt like, you know, what we did. You know, we traveled a little bit, and we were talking earlier about the discipline of like being on time and all that stuff. And it's sort of
it's the same thing.
It's kind of the same thing. It's just it's happening more often.
Right.
You know, and
there's more money involved too.
There's more money involved, and
more
there's
pressure,
So
what was your role in that band?
My role in the band, I was, outside of Gordy, I was the only other real soloist in the band. When I joined the band, it was a trio. So he was the soloist because it was just bass, drums, and guitar. And he's an amazing guitar player. But so I was, I had that role to play, which right off the bat I was playing harmonica and saxophone. But Gordy got me playing, and I still call myself a keyboard operator, not a keyboard player. I basically was being like Malcolm Young to Angus Young, in that I just played with my right hand the root and the 5 on a really loudly overdriven
like a
Japanese
loud
keyboard
sound.
Yeah, I mean, I rarely did anything that I would call musical. I'm really putting myself down, but that was a role. I did
That's
a little more
one part
sophisticated.
of the role.
Yeah, and so I was in the rhythm section at times, and that was new to me.
Sure.
I'd always played the wind instrument that arpeggiates the notes in a chord, but I'm not.
So you played saxophone and harmonica, and you sang backing vocals.
And I did sing too. Yeah,
harmonies and things like that.
Yeah, I sang harmony, and
that's good.
which is also new to me because I'd always been in a blues band setting where harmony vocals don't really exist. There's a lead singer, So I had to try and figure that out, and with Gordy's help and others in the band and stuff like that. So
that's great.
Yeah, I like that challenge too. I'm glad it still sticks with me.
So at that period of time, say being on the road versus home, how long? So you were on the road like maybe 60% of the time, and
in a 12-month period. Sometimes when it was really, really busy, it was like a going concern for 6 months out of the year, with lots of travel all over North America and sometimes Europe and stuff. So yeah.
What do you feel have been the hardest challenges, both musically and in the industry?
The hardest challenges. That's a good question. Because I don't know if I think of it as a challenge. I mean, I take it very seriously playing, and maybe more so than I ever. To say that I take it more seriously, I'm more interested in being aware of the theory aspect of music than I ever have. When I started playing harmonica is known as a feel and ear instrument. I'm sure when I was first playing the harmonica, I didn't know we were playing along with, I didn't know what chord. I'll say I didn't know what chords we were playing.
Okay. Yeah.
I was just
everything was by ear.
Yeah, everything was by ear,
Okay.
and that's a challenge that I guess I always felt like every musician I played with, and when I find out about them, they started playing when they're 12, 13, 14, at least and I was starting in my 20s, and I always felt I was behind the curve on everybody. So that's my challenge. But even so, with the internet, I can get my own challenges. There's so many people teaching online that I
Yeah, it's
just
different today.
peruse it and I just go, that's
Right.
something I've never tried before. What are note enclosures? Do I really know what note
Yeah.
enclosures are?
Right.
And all anyway. So that's the challenge I always find.
Okay.
But it's a challenge I
You
take
welcome.
on and really welcome.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're all the same with that.
Yeah.
Any thoughts or advice for a young musician or artist, how they would approach these kind of challenges today? As far as like, well, I guess they have YouTube to learn stuff, but as far as getting out and playing and
You know what? I really, just to put a button on it, but I really, there's so much, here's what I'm going to point out. There's so much great music being made. I think all of
Yeah.
us sitting here know, in this town at all times. And I'm talking people who are in their teens and 20s that blow my mind.
Yeah.
And what I think the challenge is, we had, or my generation had, there was way more potential money, at least, to be made playing live. It's really hard to do that. The revenue stream for, as millions of people do know, that it's not what it was for mechanical sales of your music and things like that. That, to me, is the challenge to monetize. So what the modern day 2023 musicians doing now, they got to be really creative, and I know I wouldn't be up for it. I think sometimes the technology and everything of it is it's kind of passed me by in certain respects. I mean, I understand some of it, but what I'm getting at is I think that, and they deserve it, because I hear stuff, as I'm sure we all do, that just,
Yeah,
and people locally, and I think it's
Yeah.
always been here.
yeah.
Where I think we're,
It's
I
coming
don't know that we're different than
work out.
other cities our size, but man, there's a lot of musical talent here. It's been here for decades, and that to me is the biggest challenge. So I don't know what I can provide. I mean, I certainly can provide a morale boost. I like meeting
Yeah.
these artists. Sometimes I play with them, sometimes I record with them, and play live with them. And I'm ready to answer your questions.
I think
as
stick
best
to
I
your
can.
guns and it usually works out.
Yeah.
Okay, one last question, and I'll just kind of put everything into one thing. Do you have any desire or energy to keep playing on a regular basis somewhat? Would you ever consider starting a new project under your leadership? And do you feel there's a market out there for the music of your interest enough to perform at venues that would support it? Has your notoriety helped you maintain a place in the industry a little bit, do you think?
You know what? Anyway, this is really recent. I mean, coming out of the pandemic, and even before that, I really don't. I really enjoy being a side man. I mean, I sometimes in a position to play with people where I might sing 5 or 10 songs a night, and there's 2 or 3 other singers in the band. But I don't feel like I'm a band leader at that point.
Okay.
And I really do enjoy
Being a side man.
being a side man. I played with the Saints, with Jeff Burrows and Jody
Yeah,
Refool
as
and
you were doing
Kenny
recently,
Howell and the Twisted
Good.
Sisters and people like that. And I really enjoy that,
Yeah.
being part of an ensemble. And I like what we do. That it's to raise money for needy charities like food banks and things like that. And that's what and I love session work.
Okay, good.
I really dig session work. I get calls for, and so my background has helped with that. That just people know about me from Big Sugar and things like that. And I really enjoy session work. I feel like I get my artistic juices that way too, to come out.
So out of all the songs you've ever heard or played or wrote or copied, is there anything you might want to play for this show? Or to-
You know what? I mean, hard to pin down one song, but yeah, there's a band I know I mentioned earlier in the interview that a Canadian band called John Ford, who they have this song called Ocean that I happened to record years after they did, and I asked their permission to record it, but they were good friends of mine, and that song, I've known about it. The first night I heard it was in Kitchener when I was in a dressing room, and I thought, I'd never met that band. I could hear their music coming up from the stage, and I went, what is that song? What, that melody, that sense of harmony, those lyrics? And it's still to this day. I've performed it for years after I recorded it, and that's a song I'd like to do for Songs
Sounds
of Our
great.
Lives. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we
it's
look forward
called
to that.
Ocean by John Ford.
Okay, perfect. So we'll make sure the audience gets a chance to hear that, and
Right.
it sounds good. So we will get to that.
All right.
Okay, well, first, I'd like to thank you, Kelly, for this
My pleasure.
this interview today. I mean,
Yeah.
there's we could go on for another day with
Yeah.
all this because I know there's so much.
I was kind of going there, wasn't I?
That's okay.
We could-
It's good.
Part 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. But yeah, I appreciate it. You know.
No problem. I'd like to get together again and rehash some things that we missed, just between you
Sure.
and I, because
Yeah,
there was
yeah.
so many good experiences and so many things I was thinking about that I didn't want to get us sidetracked. But,
Yeah.
And one last point, I don't know how you feel about this, but I've had people approach me about one more Windsor Dukes reunion show at some point. So I'm just putting it out
Oh
there.
wow, you saved that one for the end, didn't you?
Yeah. So just
wow, that would be. Oh, I would love
because
that.
I've had a lot of people say that they would come to that and they would
Yeah.
it might be kind of fun. You never know.
Okay, I'll put on my. I don't even know if I have to be the band leader, but I would love that. We could.
So it's just a thought.
Yeah, get JP to come back and
He was down a little while ago.
I know. I got the
That's
same.
so-
I think you did too, as I know you did.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's something that would be interesting. I think there's a lot of people out there that would have the interest because there's a lot of memories there. A lot
Yeah.
of people that are still
Oh.
around that would be interested anyway.
You're in. I'm in.
All right.
JP's in. Whoever.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you very much, Kelly.
Yeah.
It's a great interview.
Thanks,
and,
Kelly.
hope we can keep healthy and keep going.
Yeah. Knock
That's the
on.
key. Yes.
Knock on
Plastic.
Formica or whatever.
Wow, fellas, that was quite an interview. Kelly, your musical life is quite rich and full of history. Ladies and gentlemen, we would normally answer the song request of Kelly with a performance by another musician. However, this time, the song request will include Kelly playing a favorite song entitled Ocean by the John Ford Band. Joining Kelly will be Grady Kaplan on acoustic guitar and pedal steel guitar and Ian Smith on piano. Recorded and producing the song will be our own interviewer, Kevin Venney.
I'm an ocean. I'm an ocean. I'm ankle deep. I am the sea. Bathed in freedom. The waves are waiting up my sleeve to sweep your beach. For 1,000,000 miles I swell and fall. To flow is all I wish for. But the deepest dark of my recess. Oh no, you'll never guess. For 1,000,000 miles I swell and fall. To flow is all I wish for. The deepest dark of my recess. Oh no, you'll never guess. I'm an ocean. I'm an ocean.
Thank you, Kelly, Grady, Ian, and Kevin, for your good rendition of the song Ocean. Kevin and Kelly, thank you for the plethora of information that you were able to share with us during the interview. And thank you all for tuning into this episode of the Songs of Our Lives. Until next time, my name, Wendell Phipps.